Good morning. Welcome back to the Crazy Joe's Adventure, the Crazy Joe Adventures channel. This is a different kind of video for Crazy Joe Adventures. Normally, I say the distinction between Crazy Joe Adventures and Crazy Joe's Concession Stand is that Crazy Joe Adventures take place outside of the basement. Crazy Joe's Concession Stand takes place in the basement. However, this video didn't really fit in either category very well, so I thought it kind of fit here a little better based on the last video we uploaded. Our last video, we looked at the new Sesame Place classic character plush, Alice Snuffleupagus. And this video is about my wish list, my top 10 wish list of classic characters I'd like to see Sesame Place make in the future. So even though we're not out and about and we're in the basement, and normally that kind of video wouldn't fit on the Adventure channel, you can view this as a supplement to the last video. This is kind of my supplement talking about the Sesame Place Classic Character Collection. Now, for those of you who haven't watched the last video, aren't really aware, every year Sesame Place in Langhorne, Pennsylvania, and there's now one in San Diego, California. I've never been to the San Diego location, but the Langhorne, Pennsylvania location, every year there is a new classic character added, where they bring back a character that was popular in the past that isn't really seen regularly on Sesame Street anymore, and they add this character as a limited time thing to their classic character collection. In the past, we've gotten characters like Harry Monster. Harry Monster, obviously a very popular Muppet in the 70s and 80s on Sesame Street. You always saw Harry Monster voiced by, I'm doing my pet peeve. You never call Muppet performers voices. They are performers. I'm doing my own pet peeve here. Performed by the late Jerry Nelson. Harry Monster was one of the standard Muppets you would have seen in the 70s and 80s on Sesame Street. They did Tweedlebugs. Remember the Tweedlebugs? They were quite prevalent on Sesame Street in the 70s, and they did in past years a Tweedlebug. They did Barkley. Everybody remembers Barkley, right? The dog on Sesame Street. Hasn't really been seen in many, many years, but here he is. They made him a couple years ago at Sesame Place. And last year was Guy Smiley, the famous talk show or the game show host. Guy Smiley was last year's classic character. So this year, as we know, is Alice Snuffleupagus, which isn't bad. That's fine. You know, I think she dates back to 1989, maybe 1990, if my memory is correct. I'm sorry, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I do remember seeing her on the TV when I was younger, but old enough that I had kind of aged out of Sesame Street. My mom was a nanny, so she used to have Sesame Street on for the kids she would watch. And I do remember Alice being a presence for a number of years there. So it's not a bad choice. But I've put together a list of my top 10, the top 10 classic Sesame Street characters I would like to see represented in Sesame Place's classic character collection. Sesame Place, or SeaWorld. Sesame Place is owned by SeaWorld. SeaWorld, if you're watching, here is, you can just write this list down. You got your next 10 years planned. This is your next 10 years right here, if you just watch this video. Anyone at SeaWorld watching, I purport to speak for the fans. And I'm sure the fans agree. I don't know. I'm sure the fans agree with me. There you go. There you go. All right. So here we go. My top 10 characters I would like to see added to the Sesame Place Classic Character Collection. And let's start with number 10, Don Music. Don Music, classic character who used to be a songwriter, and he classically used to bang his head on the keyboards and go, "I'll never get it, never, never, never." Performed by Richard Hunt. He was a very, very popular character in the 70s and 80s. Reportedly, they stopped using him because kids were imitating him and smacking their heads against the keyboard. Whether that's true or not, that's the story. That's what they claim. But Don Music, that's my number 10. Number nine on my list of my wish list for classic character plushes at Sesame Place. Number 9, Gladys the Cow. Gladys the Cow, another character performed by Richard Hunt. Richard Hunt was one of the most prolific of all the Muppet performers back in those days, both on Sesame Street and the Muppet Show. And Fraggle Rock, too. He was Junior Gorg on Fraggle Rock. So, yeah, there you go. Gladys the Cow was one of his signature characters back in those days. Number 8. Now, this is a deep cut. This is a deep cut. A lot of you aren't going to know who this guy is. And those of you who do are probably going to think he's another guy. But my number 8 is a Muppet from Sesame Street who... This is a pipe dream. They're never going to make this one because this one's just too deep. It's just too deep. A Muppet from Sesame Street named Bip Bipadada. Bip Bipadada. There's his picture. Now, the thing with him is he's kind of an obscure Sesame Street character, number 1. But number 2, on top of being an obscure Sesame Street character, a lot of people get him mixed up with the Muppet Show character Mana. Mana and Bip Bipadada look very much alike. And they're both performed by Jim Henson, and they're very similar characters, but they are separate characters. Mana is considered a Muppet character. He is now owned by Disney, whereas Bipadada was never one of the characters sold to Disney, so he's still controlled by the Sesame Workshop. So there you go. They'll never make him. They'll never make him. Because for one thing, most people wouldn't know who he is, and other people think he's Mana. I mean, you know people are going to pick him up and go, oh, it's the Mana guy. And it's not the Mana guy. It's like the Mana guy's like long lost cousin or something. One of my favorite songs he used to do on Sesame Street was the rhyming song, you know, fat, 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 cat, cat, cat. And the guys would do all the rhymes, and he'd come in and go, well, the fat cat's out on a hat. That's one of my favorites. But anyway, there you go. Bipadada. That one ain't going to happen, but it's my wish list, man. It's my wish list. All right, number 7. Forgetful Jones. Forgetful Jones. Now, look, we have already done 4 on this list. And 4... no, this is number 5. This is number... Is it? No. Look, I can't count. Okay. This is number 4 on the list. And the 3rd by Richard Hunt. Richard Hunt, man. Very prolific on Sesame Street in those days. But my number 7 pick is Forgetful Jones. Forgetful Jones was a cowboy on Sesame Street who had a real hard time remembering things. He was used extensively during the 80s. You'll remember him. He used to come in the room and they'd say something to him and he'd be like, I forgot! Yeah, Forgetful Jones was huge back in the 80s. And he was retired after the death of Richard Hunt. I don't know if they've ever used him again. Maybe they have. I know he was in the audience. I saw him in the audience on the Elmo's Talk Show on HBO. He was like sitting in the, but he didn't have a speaking role. There you go. My number 7, Forgetful Jones. Don't forget about Forgetful Jones, Sesame Place. Number 6, Lefty. Lefty the salesman. You know Lefty. He was performed by Frank Oz. And he was always trying to sell Ernie stuff. He'd come up to Ernie and go, psst, psst, hey, bud. And Ernie would go, who, me? And he'd go, shh, shh. And Ernie would go, who, me? And Lefty would go, right. And he'd try to sell him like an invisible ice cream cone, or he'd try to sell him a letter. You know, he was always selling something out of his coat. He'd have the trench coat, and he'd, here you go, I'm going to sell you an invisible ice cream cone. And Ernie was very gullible and would very often buy things from Lefty. Though sometimes Ernie would outsmart Lefty, because Ernie, I believe, bought the invisible ice cream cone with an invisible quarter. So he gave, there was no ice cream cone. Spoiler alert, there was no ice cream cone. But Ernie gave him like an invisible quarter. So sometimes Ernie would get Lefty. He'd outsmart Lefty. But yeah, Lefty is my number 6 pick. Number 5, another really, really deep cut that'll probably never, ever happen. But actually, in many ways, number 5 is my number 1. This is kind of the one I most want, but I put him down to number 5 because I know the odds of getting him are so astronomically slim. In fact, they're so slim he probably should have been number 10 because it ain't going to happen. But my number 5 is Harvey Knee Slapper. Harvey Knee Slapper, another Frank Oz character. Harvey Knee Slapper used to come in, he'd laugh wildly, play ridiculous jokes on someone like, you know, hey, do you want to know why? And the guy would be like, huh? Do you want to know why? And the guy would be like, yeah, I want to know why. And he'd slap a Y on him, and he goes, there's a Y. You know, Harvey Knee Slapper. He was ridiculous. I love Harvey Knee Slapper. Sesame Place, man, you'd make my day if you made Harvey Knee Slapper. All right, number 4, a character who was extremely popular in the 70s, Roosevelt Franklin. Roosevelt Franklin, a character who was performed, well, he wasn't performed. This is one of the rare instances where the voice was not the performer. Matt Robinson, who played Gordon on Sesame Street, was the voice of Roosevelt Franklin, but he was not a puppeteer. He would just provide the voice. And Roosevelt Franklin was a purple little boy who, he was a boy, but he was also the teacher of his class at Roosevelt Franklin Elementary School. And he was the show's first attempt, kind of, at doing an African-American Muppet. Now, obviously, he wasn't black. He was purple. But he was meant to be kind of black representation on the show. And he was extremely popular in the 70s. And he kind of got phased out for reasons. If you want to know more about it, there's a great documentary called, was it Street Stories? Or HBO made a documentary, Street Talk. Street Gang. That's it, Street Gang. I own the Blu-ray. I saw it in the theater. You'd think I'd remember the title. But they talk about Roosevelt Franklin in that movie. It's worth watching. So check that out, Street Gang. But yeah, Roosevelt Franklin was quite a classic character back in the day. He had record albums devoted to him. The Year of Roosevelt Franklin was the name of one of the vinyl albums, and one of them was called Roosevelt Franklin, Gordon's Friend on Sesame Street. Yeah, the character sold merch. They had puppets of them. Our friend Chris Stoltz just bought one at ZoloCon a couple weeks ago, but he really hasn't been seen since the 70s. Although I met him once. I met Roosevelt Franklin on the set of Sesame Street. I was shocked. I was on the set of Sesame Street once. Well, twice I was on the set of Sesame Street. But I just happened to see Roosevelt Franklin, and I'm like, can I get a picture? And I got a picture with Roosevelt Franklin. Sesame Place, give us Roosevelt Franklin. Number 3, one of the classic monsters of Sesame Street. Look, we got Harry. Obviously, Cookie Monster and Grover, you know, they're Elmo. They're available. But one of the classic Muppets from Sesame Street, monsters, one of the classic monsters from the 70s and 80s was Frazzle. Frazzle. You don't see Frazzle much anymore. But he was a very fierce-looking red Muppet, or orange. Sometimes he was red, sometimes he was orange. And he had big jagged teeth, and he kind of like always growled. But he was friendly, and you don't see much of him anymore. But Frazzle would make a great one. Look at him. He's just visually appealing. Like what kid wouldn't want that? Like that's going to sell. Even kids that don't know Frazzle are going to look at him and be like, I want that monster with the jagged teeth. He would sell. All right, number 2. My number 2 pick for classic characters that Sesame Place should make in the coming years. Sherlock Hemlock. Sherlock Hemlock, the world's greatest detective. Egads, it is I, Sherlock Hemlock. I loved Sherlock Hemlock. He was terrific. And you don't see much of him anymore either. In fact, remember when the Sherlock Holmes movies with Robert Downey Jr. were out a few years ago? I thought Sesame Workshop should have capitalized on that success and made a Sherlock Hemlock movie. Put a movie out with Sherlock Hemlock doing like a parody of the Sherlock Holmes movie where he's solving cases. And, they would team him up with Ernie a lot on the show. He would help Ernie with something, or maybe you make Ernie like his Watson and you make that a movie. And I'm not even talking like a little kids movie. Like I'm talking like more like the Muppet movie, something PG that parents can enjoy. Then you use the revenue, take the revenue from that movie and put it into Sesame Street, because Sesame Street's, you know, like kind of a nonprofit. So I don't know. I thought that was a good idea, but they don't come to me for their ideas. It's shocker. All right, and number one, the character I most want a Sesame Place plush of, the Amazing Mumford. I love the Amazing Mumford. The magician used to appear on Sesame Street regularly in the 70s and 80s. He still pops up from time to time. He used to be performed by Jerry Nelson. You remember Mumford. His tricks would never go quite well. His magic words were a la peanut butter sandwiches. I love Mumford. So there you go. That's my list. Number 10, Don Music. Number 9, Gladys the Cow. Number 8, Bip Bipadada. Number 7, Forgetful Jodes. Number 8, Lefty. Number 5, Harvey D. Slapper. Number 4, Roosevelt Franklin. Number 3, Frazzle. Number 2, Sherlock Hemlock. And number 1, The Amazing Mumford. Like I said, a video like this of me sitting in the basement in front of the lunch boxes, this is not the kind of video you usually get from this channel. This is more the kind of video you get from the Crazy Joe's Concession Stand channel, where we talk movies. And here we go out and we have adventures. But this, like I said, we can consider a supplemental to the last video at Sesame Place. So this is an unusual one. Though we will be doing another one of these videos on this channel when the Hallmark ornaments come out in July, because we always do the Hallmark ornaments. So we'll be sitting here, Christine and I, showing you our Hallmark haul. But other than that, you're not going to usually see this backdrop on this channel. This is more, you're on the set of the Concession Stand right now. So, and if you haven't subscribed to Crazy Joe's Concession Stand, please do. The link is in the notes down below, and that's where we talk movies, movie reviews, physical media reviews, and things of that sort. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Keep wearing those pajamas.
Keep wearing those pajamas with the plastic feet. Keep wearing those pajamas. Tell everyone you meet. Keep wearing those pajamas with the back door flap. Keep wearing those pajamas. Don't open, it's a trap. Oh no, it's a trap. Some people call them PJs, some people call them jammies. They can come embroidered with big money and no whammies. They can have 100 tiny commander adamas, but no matter how they look, just keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep wearing those pajamas. And now we're having fun. Keep wearing those pajamas. And now the song is done.